It was a quiet Saturday afternoon in the neighborhood. The kind of day when the sun feels warm but not harsh, and the streets are filled with the distant hum of lawnmowers and children's laughter. I had just returned from a long week at work, and the only thing on my mind was rest. My trunk was loaded with bags of groceries I had carefully picked up a week ahead. A mix of fresh vegetables, meats, and a few treats to enjoy while catching up on my favorite shows. To anyone else, it was an ordinary errand, but for me, it was the kind of normalcy I cherished. Being the police chief meant that my life was often consumed by long hours, tense situations, and constant responsibility. Grocery shopping was one of the few simple routines that grounded me. As I began unloading the bags, I noticed a group of teenagers congregating near the end of the cul-de-sac. They were loud, boisterous, and clearly preparing for some kind of party. My attention, however, quickly fixed on one figure in particular, Karen's son. Everyone in the neighborhood knew Karen, and not for the best reasons. She had a reputation for being nosy and entitled, and frequently at odds with the HOA over trivial matters. Her son, unfortunately, had inherited both her arrogance and her temper. He strutted with the kind of misplaced confidence that only comes from being coddled and never held accountable. He spotted me and, without hesitation, began walking over. The smirk on his face told me he wasn't coming to exchange pleasantries. Instead, he eyed my groceries like they were his by right. He had been bragging earlier in the week, according to some neighbors, that he was planning a massive party while his mother was away. From the look of things, it was happening that very night. The arrogance in his stride carried the clear assumption that whatever he needed for it, he could simply take. As he reached me, his tone carried that entitled sharpness I had heard before when he spoke down to others. He demanded that I hand over my bags, claiming his party was more important than whatever I planned to do with them. He didn't ask, he ordered, and when I hesitated, he leaned in, throwing in a few racially charged remarks that revealed just how deep his prejudice ran. It wasn't the first time I had witnessed or heard about his behavior. Several neighbors had quietly complained in the past, whispering about his nasty comments and entitled attitude, but few had dared confront him directly. After all, his mother's reputation for stirring trouble made most people wary of any conflict with the family. I stood there, my hands tightening on the grocery bags, weighing my options. He had no idea who he was speaking to. To him, I was just another neighbor, someone he assumed he could push around with no consequences. In his mind, the groceries were his for the taking, and I was simply an obstacle. But in reality, he was poking at someone who had dealt with far worse confrontations, someone who had authority, training, and the law on their side. Still, there was something almost surreal about the moment. Here was a teenager, fueled by arrogance and entitlement, barking orders at a police chief as though he owned the street. What struck me most wasn't the demand itself, but the casual racism he laced into it. It was cruel, unnecessary, and revealing. This wasn't just about groceries. It was about power. He wanted to prove he could intimidate me, that he could use his privilege to take what he wanted. And in that instant, I realized this wasn't just another neighborhood inconvenience. This was a situation that could spiral quickly if left unchecked. The son wasn't just entitled. He was emboldened, and given the way he spoke, it was clear that he had never been forced to face consequences. I didn't respond right away. Instead, I calmly set the grocery bags down and studied him. His friends lingered at a distance, watching the exchange of smirks, clearly expecting him to win this little showdown. They looked at him like a ringleader, the one who always got away with things. It was easy to see how unchecked behavior could fester in such an environment. My silence seemed to irritate him, and he grew louder, his words sharper. He demanded again, his voice echoing across the street, this time making it clear that he expected obedience. The weight of the moment pressed heavily on me. I could see the neighbors watching from behind their curtains, peeking out to witness the drama without stepping in. That was the unspoken rule in HOA neighborhoods like ours. Observe, gossip, but never get directly involved. As he sneered at me, waiting for compliance, I knew this wasn't going to end here. He was about to learn a lesson he had never been taught before. What he didn't realize was that the man he was trying to intimidate was far more than just another resident unloading groceries. And as I calmly lifted my gaze to meet his, The first pieces of the inevitable storm began to fall into place. The real confrontation was only beginning. The tension on that driveway was thick, but I remained calm. Years in law enforcement had taught me the power of composure. His friends jeered in the distance, emboldening him to continue his performance. To them, this was entertainment, a show of dominance from their self-appointed leader. What they didn't know was that their ringleader had just bitten off far more than he could chew. Instead of engaging him in a shouting match, I simply picked up my groceries again and turned toward my house. That simple act seemed to ignite him. He shouted louder, his voice cracking with frustration as he hurled more insults across the street. The words he used weren't just disrespectful. They were venomous, the kind that leave scars if allowed to go unchallenged. He spat out phrases that revealed not only ignorance, but a deeper rot instilled over years. It wasn't just arrogance. It was a sense of superiority that had gone unchecked his entire life. His rage grew as he realized his intimidation wasn't working. He stomped forward, closing the distance, puffing up his chest like he was ready to take what he wanted by force. I could feel the eyes of the neighborhood fixed on us. Curtains shifted, blinds tilted. Everyone wanted to see what would happen next, but still, no one dared step outside.